All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good Erev Shabbos, Chilik Pesach Sheni. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar. Stephen Terizin for dedicating all the Shirman Drushos this month in honor of their grandson, Matan Shmuel Aaron. May Meretz Hashem be zocheh to grow to be a Ben Torah ad Mev Esem Shanim Tovos. Our week of learning sponsors, Haley and Ari Lichterman in memory of Haley's mother, Rachel Leah Bas Ruvain Meir. To thank our anonymous sponsor, Leili Nishmas Saradina Bas Eli Melech, and Moshe Aaron Alter Ben Binyamin Yosef. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an Aliyah and the family in Nechama. We thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Shmuel and Rabin Karapkin, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Shmuel's father, Mr. Leonard Karapkin, Zichron Livracha. And we also thank our Daf Yomi sponsors today, Sarah Weingot, in honor of Itchy Weingot's birthday. Our second birthday dedication this morning. Pretty incredible. And of course, again, my wife and I dedicate Meretz Hashem the Daf this morning in the schus of the bris of our grandson, B'sha'a Tova U'Mitzlachos. He should be zocheh Meretz Hashem to enter the bris of Avram Avinu. And he should be zocheh Meretz Hashem to grow to Torah, to Chuppah, to Ma'asim Tovim, and Meretz Hashem be a boy and a man who is Mekadesh Shem Shamayim every day of his life. Amen. I'll say with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Lamed Zayin 37. And today we are starting from a very respectable spot. I just want to put this out. We are starting in Meretz Hashem on Lamed Vav Amud Beis. I kind of left you right there in the middle of the Yosef story. So we left off Tanya. So I will say, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, about 17, 18 lines up from the bottom. No, I take that back. A little bit earlier than that. About 20 lines up from the bottom. Yeah, maybe about 22 lines up from the bottom. I say, so it's far up from the bottom. So remember again, we left off in the middle of the Yosef story, and in the middle of the Yosef story, the Gemara was teaching us that Yosef seemed, according to the version of the Gemara, seemed to be ready to submit his desires, ultimately give in to Eshes Potifar. And in the last moment, the Gemara says, Ra'a diyukno shel aviv b'chalom. He saw his father's reflection in the window. We pointed out in yesterday's daf that Yosef looked exactly like his father. So in reality, Yosef wasn't seeing Yaakov, but rather who was Yosef seeing? Yosef was seeing himself. But when it says that he saw the image of his father, he was seeing the potential. And Yosef understood that in that moment he was at a crossroads. Choose, right? One of those pivotal moments where the decision you make will put you on a particular path in life. So the Gemara says, so the pasuk says, Vateshev be'esan kashto, Rabbi Yochanan b'shum Rabbi Meir sheshavsa kashto le'esano. So we'll say literally again, the bow returned to its place, meaning that in that moment Yosef stilled his desire. So after seeing this reflection of his father, after hearing this inner voice telling him, do you want your name on the Choshen, or do you want to be known as Roez Zonos? What do you want out of life? Yosef is able to subdue his desires. Rabbi say, just understand the incredible strength that represents, right? The ability. Remember again, where is he? Eshes Potifar is holding on to his clothing. And remember again, as we spoke about in yesterday's daf, she is not exactly a nuanced woman. You do not need to read between the lines with her, right? Because Lamaisa, she's saying it explicitly. And yet, in the midst of all this, he finds the way to subdue his desire. Vayafozu zuroi yadav. So what happened? Yina'at yadav bekarka. So I'll say literally again, he plunged his fingers into the ground. Now Rashi says over there, what that means is, he did something physically painful in order to subdue his desires. V'yasa shichvas zar'o mibein tzipornei yadav. And ultimately, again, shichvas zara. So semen came out from his fingers. Now we'll say, there's a machlokis in the Maharsha. Is that literal, or is that saying that Yosef did experience a seminal emission as a result of this arousal? Right? One way or another, what it means is Yosef chose not to sin. That's the point of there. Yosef chose not to sin, ultimately with Eshes Potifar, but there still was some type of emission. So the Gemara says, Mide Abir Yaakov, Mi garam lo sheichakek, we'll talk about this in just a moment. Mi garam lo sheichakek al avnei ephod. What caused Yosef's name to be inscribed on the ephod? Ela Abir Yaakov. ultimately, again, the strength of Yaakov. Misham roa even Yisrael, Misham zocha v'naseh roa, shene emar, roa Yisrael ha'azina noi ketzon Yosef. So I'll say, ultimately, again, it's this inner strength that Yosef HaTzadik demonstrated, this ability to quiet his desire, this ability to subdue his wants in the midst of a raging fire of desire. This koach ultimately allowed his name to be inscribed on the Choshen. Tanya, we'll say, listen to this. In reality, Yosef should have been the father of 12 tribes in the same way that his father was. Remember, again, I will say, in a certain respect, Yosef was the Bechar, right? Yosef was the firstborn. Why was Yosef the firstborn? Well, he was the firstborn of Rachel Imenu, who ultimately, again, was the desired wife of Yaakov. So the same way that Yaakov had 12 tribes, Yosef was supposed to have 12 tribes. So what happened? Shneimar Eila told us, Yaakov, Yosef. These are the generations of Yaakov, Yosef, Ella, Sheyatza Shichvas Zaro, Mibein Tziparnei Yadav. But nevertheless, because of this emission, Rabbi said, this is incredible over here. This is incredible. You see, as the Gemara ascribes this idea to this emission that Yosef has as a result of this encounter with Eshes Potiphar. So because he has this emission, therefore again, he lost the opportunity to be the father of 12 tribes. See, Rabbi say, here's what's incredible. You read this Gemara, you're like, what? What? This man just withstood the greatest temptation, right? A temptation that probably 99% of people would not be able to stand up to. So why is he held accountable for this seminal emission? And I will say, what's the answer? What's the answer? The answer is, he put himself in that position. The answer is that at the end of the day, like the Gemara says, he went to the house. You're right, Yosef, incredible. See, I will say, sometimes success in life is not simply withstanding temptation, but success in life is not putting yourself in the place of temptation to begin with. So much of life is trying to be proactive, trying to be roa es hanolad, and trying to figure out how do I not get into these situations to begin with. Obviously, some situations you can't avoid, and so in those situations one has to exhibit incredible personal strength. But so much of life is trying to figure out how could I avoid the situations of temptation to begin with. So it seems to be, because you see from this Gemara, Yosef's held accountable for something. He was supposed to have 12 shvatim. Now he didn't have 12 shvatim because of the emission. Why did the emission occur? Because he allowed himself to be placed in that situation. And especially, again, this works well with the narrative that Yosef went to the house that day for what? For what? Lasos Malachto. Or with Machlok is Lasos Malachto. Does Lasos Malachto mean domestic responsibility? Does Lasos Malachto mean to satisfy his urges? So if you go with the idea that it's to satisfy Yosef, you put yourself in that situation. It's incredible, overwhelming, Herculean strength that you stood up to temptation. But why put yourself there to begin with? Listen, this happens all the time in life, right? Something goes wrong, right? I make a mistake, or I commit an aver. I'm like, oh, how did this happen? And I'm like, how did this happen? I walked over here, right? I put myself into this situation, and the truth is, I was fully cognizant of the risks, yet I still chose to put myself in this situation. Well, there's liability and culpability for that. Incredible. Even though Yosef wasn't the father of 12 Shvatim, Binyamin was. The Kula Nichbru al Shmo. And all the Shvatim, all of the sons of Binyamin, ultimately, again, were named for Yosef. Shenemar, Ubenei Binyamin Bela, Ubechar v'Ashbel. Bela, why does he name a son Bela? Shnivla bin Umos, because Yosef is incredible. Binyamin has 12 sons, right? And all of Binyamin's sons were named because of things regarding Yosef, which is incredible. This was like Binyamin, the little brother's incredible expression of love for his older brother. Every single name of a son somehow corresponded to Yosef. Bela, Shinivla bin Umos. So Bela, because ultimately Yosef was swallowed up by the nations. Bechar, Bechar li'imo. Yosef was firstborn. But right, Ashbel, Sheshavu Kel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally enslaved him. Moshe made him a captive. Right? Gera, Shegar ba'achsanyos. He had to live in different places. Naaman, Shenoim biyoser. He was very sweet, right? He was very sweet. He was very pleasant. Achi Verosh, right? Achihu, he was my brother. Veroshi, he's my head. Remember, I want to point out, when Binyamin had all of his sons, he thought Yosef was dead, right? Remember, all of these boys were born and named before they discovered that Yosef was the viceroy in Egypt. So can you imagine about saying Binyamin is having each of these, right? It's incredible. Binyamin is having a bris, is naming each of his sons, thinking that his older brother is dead. And so every single son that he has, he names as a testament to his brother. It's so moving. It's so moving. Right? Mupim v'chupim, chulo ra'a b'chupasi, v'ani lo ra'isi b'chupaso. I didn't see his chuppah, he didn't see my chuppah. Ve'erd, sheyara lebeina umos ha'olam. Erd, he went down to live amongst the nations of the world. Others say ve'erd, shepanav domin le'vered, that my brother Yosef was so handsome, his face was like a rose. Incredible. This is incredible. In the moment that Paro said to Yosef, Ubiladecha, lo arim ish es yado. Remember again, this is after Yosef interprets the dream. He experiences a meteoric rise to power. Paro says, you are the second in command of Egypt. Without your consent, no one could lift their head, or lift their hand, sorry. Amru astanige Paro, Eved shalak chorah be'esrim kesef tamshileo aleinu. So as you can imagine, Yosef's promotion did not sit well with the rest of Paro's cabinet. Right? So remember in their eyes, what was Yosef? What was Yosef? A Hebrew slave. So literally a Hebrew slave who you bought for 20 shekel now is in charge of us. Is in charge of us. Amar lahem, Genune malchus ani ro'ebo. This is incredible. So Paro says, you don't understand. I see elements of monarchy in this young man. Amar lo imkein yeheyodeh b'shem lashon. If that's the case, then ultimately again he should be able to speak 70 languages. In other words, if he's a monarch, he should be able to be multilingual. Ba Gavriel v'limdo shivim lashon. Malach Gavriel came and taught Yosef 70 languages. Lo havak hagamar. For whatever reason, Yosef wasn't chapping. Right? In other words, that he wasn't learning the languages. So ultimately, again, the Malach Gavriel added another letter to the name of Yosef, representing the name of Hashem. V'limeid shene'emar eidos b'Yehosef shemo b'tzeiso al eretz Mitzrayim. So we'll say that's where the Yehosef comes from. Right? The Yehosef, the extra hay, was incredible. Was added by the Malach Gavriel so that Yosef should have expanded understanding so as to be able to learn all 70 languages. Ulamachar kol lishna de'ishtai paro b'hadeya haderlei. Any language, the next day, let's say second wide line on the bottom of Lam Vavam Beis, the next day, any language in which Paro conversed with Yosef, ultimately Yosef was able to respond. Watch this. So what happened? Then Yosef decided, let me speak with Paro. He spoke with Paro in Lashon HaKodesh Hebrew. And Paro didn't understand. Amarle, Agmare. So Paro said to Yosef, teach me this new language. Agmare v'lo gamar. He tried to learn it, but he couldn't learn it. See what I was saying? You have to, it's not about languages to be able to speak Lashon HaKodesh. Right? It's about Ruchnius. It's not about your Moach, it's about your Leiv. So Paro could not understand. Paro cannot learn how to speak Lashon HaKodesh. Anyone can learn to speak Hebrew. He couldn't learn how to speak Lashon HaKodesh. He just couldn't pick it up. Amrle, Ishtabali de la Magalis. So he said to Yosef, swear to me that you will not reveal to anyone that I don't know this language, right? As Pharaoh, he was supposed to know everything. So swear to me that you won't reveal that I don't know Lashon HaKodesh. Ishtabalo. Yosef, no problem. I got you, right? I swear I'm not going to reveal it to anyone. Good, fast forward. So Ki Amrle, Avihish Biani Leimar. So I'll say, so remember again, a little bit later on in history, when then, well not so much later, when Yaakov dies, and remember Yosef asks for permission to escort his father's body to bury him in Canaan, Maras Machpelah. And he says to Paro, my father made me swear that I would bury him in Maras Machpelah. Amarle, Zilch Shilashruase. Paro said, what's the big deal? We'll get a basin together. Right? Everyone knows about Hataras and Nadarim, right? All right, Hataras, right? Let's get a couple of guys together, right? We'll go ahead, we'll say it in unison, and we'll be done. Right? In other words, let's just go ahead and get your Shavua annulled. So Amarle, Vitshili Nami Adidach. He says to Paro, okay, no problem. Should I get your Shavua annulled also? In other words, no problem. You want me to annul the oath I made to my father? While we're doing it, let me also annul the oath I made to you, right? About going ahead and not revealing that you don't speak Lashon HaKodesh. So now, even though Paro did not like this, Paro did not want his own oath annulled, and therefore, again, ultimately, he says, go and bury your father. And we'll say, just before we move on, remember again yesterday, we spoke about the idea that the descendants of Yosef, Zari di Yosef, lo shalta ba eina bisha. Lo shalta ba eina bisha. Right? That the descendants of Yosef, ultimately, again, ayin hara, does not take effect on them. So remember, we said that in order to fully appreciate that statement, we have to really understand the entire story of Yosef. And now also we can understand that. I'll give you two beautiful interpretations, and then we're going to move on very quickly. The first is the idea by the vision at Rebbe. The Rebbe says something so beautiful. He says, Zari di Yosef, lo shalta ba'ein abisha. He says, what does it mean to be the offspring of Yosef? Listen to how he reads the phrase. So to be the offspring of Yosef, lo shalta ba'ein abisha. You're careful not to use your eyes to look at anything bad. Lo shalta ba'ein bisha. You do not allow your eyes to see something negative. Sometimes to be the offspring of Yosef, the greatest thing one could do is shmiras ha'inayim. To be careful what they look at. Right? That's Zari di Yosef. Lo shalta ba'ein bisha. Do not allow your eyes to look on anything that is inappropriate or negative. The Baba Rebbe, looks a little bit differently. I'll say this is incredible. It's a much longer piece, but he brings in Halal Shiv La Hashem. In a different time when we have time for this, we'll speak about this more, but I'll just tell you the punchline of the Baba Rebbe. He says like this, Zari di Yosef lo shalta ba'ein bisha. He'll say, if you want to go out, be the kind of person who is not subject to ayin hara, which means you want to be the kind of person who's able to lift themselves up over everything negative. What do you have to be in life? Zari di Yosef. Such a pashup pshat. But what does it mean to be a Yosef? What's the etymology of Yosef's name? When Rachel Imenu goes ahead and has Yosef, she names him in such a strange way. What does she say? What does the name Yosef mean? She says, Yosef Hashem li ben acher. It's the strangest name to give a kid. Right? Lamaisa, right? Can you imagine? She has a kid, and Meretz Hashem will have another kid. What about this guy? In other words, you just had this kid. Say, the entire name of Yosef means more. Yosef Hashem li ben acher. Baba Rebbe says, Zari di Yosef. What does it mean to be an offspring of Yosef? It means a person who is never content with what he has now and always wants more. I will say, I'm not talking about in your gashmias. We're talking about in ruchnias. To be a Zari di Yosef means Yosef Hashem li ben acher. You know in Chasidus, you know what a ben is? You know what a son is? A son is a mitzvah. Right? Just like you have children, your spiritual deeds are your children as well. Here's the difference. Your spiritual deeds listen to you. Your kids don't. Right? So Lamaisa, the banim you have from your spirituality are even closer to you than your own kids because they're yours and they're yours forever. Kids do their own thing. Your Maisim Tovim are always yours. Zari di Yosef. You want to be an offspring of Yosef HaTzadik? Yosef Hashem li ben acher. I want more out of life. I want to do more. I want to accomplish more. I want to grow more. I'm never content with where I am right now. There always has to be more out of life. If you're a Zari di Yosef, then ultimately, lo shalta ba'ein abisha. Ayin hara will have no effect on you if you are a growth-oriented person. If you're a person who's never willing to stay in place, but a person who's always looking to grow, always looking to expand, the ayin hara has no effect upon you. Let's say, is that not incredible? By the way, 6:05 in the morning, you already got a vision at Rebbe, Baba Rebbe. Let's say, even if you went back to sleep for the rest of the day, it would be a good day. It'd be a good day. You're like, that sounds excellent. That sounds excellent, right? Let's go back there. But, alas, we have more to do. Yehuda Maihi. You're both say, what's the pshat with Yehuda? In other words, remember again, we spoke about the idea that Yosef was Mekadeshim Shamayim B'Seiser. Was Mekadeshim Shamayim. He sanctified the name of heaven in private. As such, again, he gets one letter of Hashem's name. Yehuda, who sanctified the name of Hashem in public, his entire name is the name of Hashem. Remember, as the point will say, before you start Gemara Masechet Sotah, and none of us ever thought about this, that the name Yehuda, in Yehuda is Yud Kei Vav Kei, is the actual name of Hashem, because Yehuda sanctified Hashem's name in public. I will say, when did Yehuda sanctify? I will say, get ready for this. Here we go. Yehuda Mai, what's the story of Yehuda? The sign Yohayir Meir Omer, Kisha Amdu Yisrael Alayam, when Klal Yisrael ultimately again we're standing by the banks of the Red Sea. I'll say, okay, fine. Okay, let's go. I've got to get on top of that before I say anything else. Oh yeah, how you shvatim menatzchim zeh zeh. Girls say, this is the side of the story you never heard. Right? The Shvatim were arguing with each other. So they're standing by the banks of the Red Sea. You're supposed to remember again, Tzias Mitzrayim. They're standing by the banks of the Red Sea. The Shvatim are arguing with each other. And what are they arguing about? Zeh omer ani yorei tchila. V'zeh omer ani yorei tchila. They're arguing about who's going to get to go into Yam Suf first. Who's going to get to go first? What happened? Kafatz, we'll say top of Lamed Zayin. Kafatz shvato shel binyamin. V'yard liyam tchila. Ultimately, again, the tribe of Binyamin, they jumped in first. Shnei Amar, Sham Binyamin, Tzar Rodim, Al Tikri Rodim, Ella Raid Yam. V'hayusari Yehuda Rogim Osam. And the princes of Yehuda were throwing stones at Binyamin. They were angry at Binyamin because they felt Binyamin took the opportunity to go in first. Shnei Amar, Sara Yehuda Rigmasam, Lefichach. Because Binyamin went into the sea first, Zacha Binyamin Atzadik V'nasa Ushpezichon L'Gvura. Binyamin Abosai became literally the host of the Shekhinah. How did Binyamin become the host of the Shekhinah? Because let's remember again, the Beis Hamikdash itself, Yerushalayim itself, straddles the tribal areas of Yehuda and Binyamin. The actual tribal line goes through the Beis Hamikdash. The Kodesh HaKadosh in the Holy of Holies sits in a technical tribal area of Binyamin. Now, to be clear, right, Yerushalayim belongs to everyone. Yerushalayim is like, I don't know what the right word. It's kind of like an embassy, right? The same way I think the way it works, right? That an embassy of a country is like actually being in that country, right? So Yerushalayim itself is like the embassy of Klal Yisrael. It belongs to all of Klal Yisrael. So even though it's situated in the tribal areas of Yehuda and Binyamin, nevertheless it belongs to everyone. But the Kodesh HaKadoshim, ultimately, again, the Holy of Holies, is situated in the tribal area of Binyamin. Why did Binyamin have that schus? Ultimately, because they went into the sea first. We both say that's one version of the story. We both say an incredible Musar Haskell on that. What's the Musar Haskell? I would say, this is incredible, people spend their entire life speaking about what they're going to do. Right? I've got a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and they have the best plans. And again, they will talk to anyone and everyone about what they're going to do. There's only one problem, which is they don't do it. They don't do it. They will say, so what's happening at the bank of the sea? We want to go first. No, we want to go first. No, we want to go first. We want to go first. What does Binyamin do? He goes first. But so the Musar Haskell is, stop talking about what you're going to do in life. And do it. Binyamin decides to do it. I will say, the incredible part is, often what happens is when you stop talking about what you're going to do and you do it, other people get brightest with you. Right? Why do other people get brightest with you? Because now you showed them that in life you should really do much less talking and much more acting, right? And much more action. So again, why do they get angry at Binyamin? Right? Binyamin, because that's the way life works. Well, say that's version 1 of the story. I'm Lord Yehuda. Lo kacha yamaisa. Yehuda says, no. That's not how it went down. Ela ze omer ein ani yorei tchila. V'ze omer ein ani yorei tchila. Well, say, no. The argument was not who's going to go first. The argument rather was, I'm not going first, right? They're arguing no one wanted to go first, right? I will say, now, kind of makes a little bit of sense, because Lamaisa, all they see in front of them is a raging sea. I will say, I want to be clear. No one knew what was going to happen, just to be very clear, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not say yet, just go into the sea and I'll split it, right? So no one knows what's going on. All they know is we're sitting at the banks of the Red Sea. The Egyptian army is in hot pursuit. They have no idea what's going to happen. So they think, I guess we should walk into the sea and walk into the water and see what happens. But no one wants to go. So what happens? Kafatz Nachshon ben Aminadav. This is the version of the story we know a little bit better. Nachshon ben Aminadav, I will say, who was from which Shevet? From Yehuda, decides to jump into the water. V'yar liyam tchila shneimar sivavuni. B'kach Shefraim u'mirma beis Yisrael u'b'mirma beis Yisrael v'Yehuda od reit am. Reit am el va'alav mevakish b'kabala hoshi'en elokim ki ba'u mayim ad nofesh tavati b'vei mitzula ve'ein ma'amad al tishtefeni shabolas yam ve'al tivla'eni mitzula. So we'll say, so what ends up happening? So Nachshon ben Aminadav goes into the water, and he keeps walking, and Chazal tell us that the pasuk that says Hushi'eni Elokim ki ba'u mayim ad nofesh, save me Hashem. Save me, Hashem, for the water is about to overtake me. Who said that pasuk? That was Nachshon ben Aminadav. When literally, again, he's up to his neck in the water, he doesn't see any possible recourse for the future. So ultimately, again, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please save me. I'm literally at my wit's end. So just to point out, who was first in? Who was first into the water? Nachshon ben Aminadav. Rabbi says, so this is the case. This is the situation, ultimately, again, of Shevet Yehuda being Mekadesh Shem Shamayim Befarhasya. They're sanctifying God's name ultimately in public, because remember, again, they are the ones who are showing the rest of Klal Yisrael what it means to have true emunah. Rabbi say an incredibly powerful day. I just want to point out how amazing it is that, remember, again, we're learning about Kriyas Yamsuf, which is part of the Pesach story. And Abba said we are learning this today. Yud Dalet Iyar Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni. I just want to point out, right, on a 7.5 year cycle. On a 7.5 year cycle, what is the statistical probability of learning a Gemara related to Pesach on Pesach Sheni? It's absolutely amazing. We always say it's the Neshika, it's the kiss from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he says, my children, I'm so proud of you that you plug away day after day after day. Lest you think you're doing something random, I'm going to show you that nothing is random. Nothing is random. It's so incredible. So we'll say, now watch, the story's not over. Now Moshe, as all of this is happening, as all of this is occurring, what is Moshe Rabbeinu doing? What is Moshe doing? Moshe Rabbeinu is going ahead and davening. Right? So, we'll say, so this is incredible. Now, you have to understand, what the Gemara is painting over here of a picture is, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know what to do. He does not know what to do in this situation, right? Because remember, again, also you have to understand something. The gadlus of Moshe Rabbeinu is that he gave himself over totally to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So, whatever, he is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's man. So, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him to do, he does. Now, the difficulty over here is this was an unscripted moment. God didn't tell him what to do, so Moshe Rabbeinu was davening. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tell me what to do. So what happens? So Rabbi say, so now, what's amazing from the Gemara is, Ba'osa Shah, in that same moment, in what moment? In what moment? Nachshon's in the water. So Rabbi said, I just want to tell you something. What's so incredible is Rashi in Chumash, on this pasuk of Dabrel b'nei Yisrael v'Yisrael, tell the people to go into the water, right? Rashi quotes this piece of the Gemara, Ba'osa Shah, Hayamoshe Rabbeinu, right? So we'll say, it's only when you learn the Gemara that, I'm saying it differently. When you learn Rashi, Ba'osa Shah just sounds like, in that moment, when Klal Yisrael is by the banks of the Red Sea, the Egyptians are behind them. When you learn it in this Gemara, Ba'osa Shah, in that moment, takes on a totally new meaning. What does Ba'osa Shah actually mean? In the moment that Nachshon ben Aminadav is in the water. Right? Nachshon ben Aminadav is in the water. Literally, he's up to his neck in the water. And what is Moshe Rabbeinu doing? Moshe Rabbeinu is davening. Now, that's not an indictment of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's Moshe Rabbeinu trying to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what should I do? Ba'osa Shah Moshe marich betfila. Amalek HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rebbe Shalom says, what are you doing? Yedidai tovim biyam va'ata marich betfila. My beloved ones are drowning in the sea. Nachshon ben Aminadav. And you're davening? Amar lefan of Ribono shel olam umma biyadi la'asos. Rebbe says, such an incredible exchange. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Rebbe Shalom, what do you want me to do? What would you like from me? What would you like from me? So Amar lo Ribono shel olam. Sorry, Amar lo Dabrel b'nei Yisrael v'Yisrael. Tell Klal Yisrael to travel, to move. Right? Tell them to move. Tell them to go into the water. V'ata harein ismatcha unetei es yadcha. And you ultimately again raise up your staff, and extend your hand. So I will say, such an incredible exchange. Moshe Rabbeinu sees Nachshon also. He's like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're right. Tell Klal Yisrael to go ahead and enter into the sea. And in terms of what I need you to do, you raise your staff. You raise your staff. Lefichach. Therefore, I will say, Zachach Yehuda lasos memshala b'Yisrael. Therefore, I will say, Yehuda ultimately again was privileged, ultimately again to have monarchy. Lasos memshala b'Yisrael. Shneimar ha'is Yehuda lekadsho Yisrael mamshalo sov. Ultimately, again, Yehuda was sanctified. Yisrael was his dominions. Matam ha'isuyda l'kadsho. Will say, why was Yisrael ultimately again sanctified? Yisrael mam shlosav mishum Hayam Ra'a V'Yanos. Ultimately, again, because the sea saw and it split. I will say, which, by the way, is also an incredible insight into leadership. Right? What does it mean to be a leader? What it means to be a leader is model the right behavior. In other words, I will say, leaders don't tell people what to do. Leaders do it themselves, and then other people follow suit. I will say, we see this, by the way, in multiple layers of Jewish leadership. So it's incredible that here, I will say, I just want to point out, normally we think, when did Yehuda get monarchy? When did Yehuda get monarchy? The truth is already in Vayechi, right? In Vayechi, by the brachas of Yaakov Avinu, Lo Yasur Shevet Yehuda Mechokik Mi Bein Raglav Ad Ki Yavo Shiv V'Lo Yikasamim. Yehuda is already told again on the deathbed of Yaakov Avinu that you're going to be the king. So the Gemara seems to feel that no, the real monarchy of Yehuda comes in this moment. In this moment when you took initiative, in this moment when you did what no one else wanted to do, that's leadership. That's leadership. You modeled what true emunah meant for all of Klal Yisrael. And I will say, this is in every level of leadership. If a person, we speak on this all the time, right? A person is a parent, paying a parent is also a position of leadership. Right? You're leading a family. So how do you effectively lead a family? Model the right behavior. It's not about what you say, and it's all about what you do. Model the right behavior for your children, and ultimately, again, they will follow suit. The Kohen is a spiritual leader. So what does the Kohen do? Remember, what does the Kohen do the first thing he comes into the basement with? What's the first thing he does? First thing he does. Right? After washing his hands and feet, Shumas Hadeshim, takes out the trash. Right? Why did I say? To show you that in the running of a home or in the running of Klal Yisrael, there is no such thing as a menial task. Everything is important. Never live life with thinking that something is beneath you. Never live life with thinking that something is beneath you. An incredible, incredible idea. So let's go weiter. So I just want to point out, there is so much to say in all of these Gemaras, so much to say. I don't know when we're going to do it. I don't know. Shavuos. It's not a bad idea. By the way, Shavuos is actually not bad to go through all of the Agadatas of Sotah. Okay, someone told me I should do gender issues, but maybe this is much easier. This is a much better sell. We'll have 4 people, but Lamaisa, okay. Yeah, I know. All right, good. Let's go weiter. Not a bad idea. All right, let's go weiter. Says Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. So we'll say back to Agrizim and Hareval. Right, back to Agrizim and Hareval. So we'll say, so now, ultimately again, we're back to what happened again, Hagrizim. So watch this. I'll tell you, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. Ef Shalomar, Levi Lamata, Shekvar Nevar Levi Lamata. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. The Gemara points out, we have a little bit of a contradiction, because we have Levi being recorded as standing on Hagrizim, right? But ultimately, again, we also have Levi standing down in the valley between the mountains. So the Gemara says, "Iav shalomar Levi lamata, shekvar ne'amar Levi lamalo. V'yav shalomar Levi lamalo, shekvar ne'amar Levi lamata." So we'll say, where was Levi in this entire process? Hakesad. We'll say, by the way, I just want to point out, when we say Levi, right? Levi is Shevet Levi, which is for our purposes Kohanim and Leviim. To which the Gemara says, not a problem. Hakesad zikne kahuna u'levia lamata bashar lamala. We'll say, very interesting. The elders of the kahuna of the Levia were standing below, and the younger Kohanim and Leviim were standing on the mountain. So that's how Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov reconciles. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, no. Kalarai l'sharis lamata bashar lamala. Anyone who was fit for service ultimately stood in the valley, and everyone else stood on the mountain. Now Rashi says over there, the way Rashi defines Roya L'Shares is Lases Es Ha'aron, anyone who was fit to carry the ark, which ultimately again is between the ages of 30 and 50. So anyone who was fit to carry the ark stood in the valley, everyone else stood on the mountain. Rabbi Omer Rebbe says, Elu vi Elu Lamata. Everyone stood in the valley. So the Gemara says, Elu ve'elu lamata in omdin. I'm sorry. Elu ve'elu, what that means, everyone stood in the valley. Now, who's everyone? Everyone means all of Klal Yisrael. So we'll say, in Rebbe's model, no one actually ascended the mountain. No one ascended the mountain. Everyone stood in the valley together. So what happened? So the Gemara says, Hafchu p'neim klape hagrizim, pasuk bracha. So we'll say, when it's time for a bracha, they turned their attention towards hagrizim, and they began with a bracha. Klape har evalu pasuk b'klala. And ultimately, then they turned their attention to har eval, and they began ultimately again with the klathra. So we'll say, so in this model, Rebbe's model, everyone stood in the valley, and they simply switched their orientation, right? They looked towards Hagrizim ultimately for the brachas, looked towards Har Eval for the klalos. So my al, so we'll say here's the problem. The pasuk says they stood on the mountain. Al b'samuch. Al doesn't have to mean on. Al could also mean what? Next to. Next to Kidisanya v'nasata al ma'areches levona zaka. I will say, for example, by lechem aparim, right? The pasuk says that you shall place on the stack of bread frankincense. Frankincense, Rebbe Omer al b'samuch. So al, in other words, you didn't put the frankincense on the bread, but rather what did you do? You put it next to the bread. So how do you know about say? Why do you interpret it as al next to? Maybe al literally means on top of. Kisha Omer v'sakosa al ha'aron. When the pasuk says ultimately again, I will say, so the pasuk over here, v'samta shamas arna edus v'sakosa al aron es haparochas. So also when it comes to hanging the curtain, so it says that you shall place the curtain on the aron. Obviously, you're not placing the curtain on the aron. Where are you placing the curtain? Next to the aron. Havi Omer al b'samos. Therefore, I will say 3 different interpretations as to how everyone stood ultimately again on Hagrizim and Har Eval. Now, the common denominator between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and Rabbi Yoshia is they hold the Shvatim were actually standing on the mountains. There's only machlokes how Shevet Levi stood. In Rebbe's model, everyone stood in the valley. Everyone stood in the valley during brachos. Looked to Hagrizim during the klalos. Looked to Har Eval. Incredible. Let's go back there. So havchu pneim klape Hagrizim pasuk bracha. So Tana Rabbanon. So this is actually very interesting. Tana Rabbanon. Baruch bichlal, baruch beprat. So say the way it worked with the brachos and klalos. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is actually towards the middle of the column, right across from Tosas E F Shar. Baruch bichlal, baruch beprat. What does that mean? Listen to this. Kala brachos. Kala brachas va'klalos. Nemru b'hagrizim v'har eval bichlal ubeprat. So we'll say all of the brachas and klalos were said on Hagrizim and Har Eval. Both rabbos say bichlal. Right? Bichlal means in a general statement, and bifrat in a specific statement. For example, he says, Baruch asher yakim es divrei haTorah hazos. Arur asher lo yakim. So we'll say, for example, it says, blessed is the one who will uphold the words of the Torah. Cursed is the one who will not uphold the words of the Torah. So we'll say, that's a klal. Like that's a general statement. So hari bichlal. For example, Baruch asher lo yas apesol masecha. Blessed is the one who does not make an idol. Cursed is the one who does make it. So we'll say, see what's happening over here? Everything is said in a general statement, and everything is said in a specific statement. So Baruch bichlal, Baruch biprat. So we'll say, so incredible. So we'll say, now back to the Gemara. So Tana Rabbanon, Baruch bichlal, Baruch biprat. So the Gemara says, Ar bichlal, Ar biprat. Lilmo. So we'll say so just keep that in mind, right? So everything is said every bracha is said in a general way and in a specific way. Every klala is said in a general way and in a specific way. Fine. Now we'll say, in addition to that, every single mitzvah has 4 components associated with it. What are the 4 components? Lilmod, ululamed, lishmar, valasos. This is incredible. Every single mitzvah, there's an obligation to learn, right? To learn, to understand the mitzvah. Lilamed, to teach the mitzvah, right? To teach it to others. Lishmar, to guard it, right? To safeguard it. Lasos, to perform it. Okay. Hare, Amadeus, Hare, Arba. So you see over here that every mitzvah has 4 components. So what do you see over here? Arba, have shmona. So now I have every mitzvah, right? Every bracha has a klal and a prat, right? And every avera has a klal and a prat. That's 4. Plus, again, every single mitzvah and avera also has 4 different components to it. Lilmod, lilamed, lishmar, velasos, harishmona. Therefore, it turns out that every mitzvah truly has 8 components to it. Shmona, but again, it's 8 for brachas, 8 for klalos. Harisheshesrei. So it turns out that altogether, ultimately, again, there are 16 components, 16 pieces, or 16 elements to every single mitzvah. So Rabbi say, so now watch this. This is incredible. V'chein b'sinai, v'chein ba'arvasmav. Now Rabbi say, now remember again, the bris, the covenant regarding mitzvos was given and reinforced multiple times throughout our peoplehood. It was given to us at Sinai, and then again in Avos Moav, Shneimar, Eila Divrei Habris, Asher Tziva Hashem Es Moshe, Uksiv, Ushmarten Es Divrei Habris Hazos, Nimtza Mem ches brisos al kol mitzvah u mitzvah. Shabbos say, so here's what's incredible. So it turns out that every mitzvah essentially has 16 elements associated with it. Now I will say, so every mitzvah has 16 elements, and I will say the mitzvahs were given over to Klal Yisrael essentially how many times? Really 3 times. Remember, because he's leaving out one. There's once at Har Sinai, there's once at Arvos Moav, and I will say, remember now what are we talking about? Har Grizim and Har Eval. So it turns out that what? Nimtza mem ches brisos al kol mitzvah u mitzvah. It turns out that Lamaisa, there are 48 brisos. I'll say it's so special to be able to use that word today, right? 48 brisos, 48 covenants for every single mitzvah. Which I will say, if you think about it, is such an incredible idea. 48 mitzvahs, 48 covenants on every single mitzvah. Rabbi Shimon, motzi har grizim v'har eval, umachnis oel moed sheba midbar. Rabbi Shimon takes out har grizim and har eval, and instead he puts in oel moed. So we'll say, so again, here's what everyone is agreeing on. Everyone is agreeing that Lamaisa, again, there were 3 times that Klal Yisrael was given over the Torah, right? 3 times that the covenant was enforced. So, right, we all agree that one of them is Har Sinai, right? And ultimately, again, it seems to be also agree, well, actually, that's the only one they agree on, right? Then the other 2 are either Arvos Moav, Har Grizim, or Oel Moed and Har Grizim, or Oel Moed and Arvos Moav leaving out Har Grizim. Okay, Upluta Dahani Tanoi. The Sanyo, Rabbi Shmuel says, Klolos Nemru B'Sinai, Upratos Ba'oel Moed. So as Rabbi Shmuel says, general statement, is actually an interesting idea, that Klolos means the general statement regarding mitzvos was said at Har Sinai. Upratos, these specific statements were given over at Oel Moed. Rabbi Kiva says, Klolos Upratos Nemar B'Sinai, V'nishnu Ba'oel Moed, V'nishtalshu Ba'avos Moed. Rabbi Kiva says, no, it's actually an interesting idea. What was given over to Klal Yisrael at Har Sinai? Right? What was actually given over to us? So I just want to point out, Rabbi Shmuel says, the general ideas were given over to us, right? The klalos were given over to us. Klalos with a chaf, not with a kof, not curses, right? But again, general ideas, the general, right? The principles, the general categories were given over to us at Har Sinai. And pratos, the details, were given over to us at Oel Moed, in the Mishkan. Rabbi Akiva says, no, everything was given over to us at Har Sinai. Klalos, pratos, nemru b'Sinai, v'nishnu ba'Oel Moed, then they were then reviewed in Oel Moed, v'nishtalshu ba'arvos Moav. And then a 3rd time, they were reviewed in Arvos Moav. Right, you see what's happening over here? Ve'ein lecha kol dvar mitzvah u'mitzvah sheksuva b'Torah shelo nichrasu aleh arbaim u'shmonim brisos. And I will say there is not one word in the Torah that does not have at least 48 covenants ultimately again associated with it. Because remember again, if we go with every single mitzvah having essentially 16 different components associated with it, the Torah is given over to Klal Yisrael 3 times. Machlokes when the 3 times were, right? Everyone's agreeing Sinai was number 1. What are the other 2? It turns out that every single mitzvah, every single Jew has 48 covenants, 48 brisos on every single mitzvah. Incredible. Rabbi Yehuda ish kfar Akko omer mishum Rabbi Shimon ein lecha mitzvah u'mitzvah sheksuva b'Torah shelo nichrasu aleh arba u'shmona brisos shel 600,000 u'shloshes alafim v'chamesh me'os v'chamishim. So we'll say, now listen to this. Now the truth is, if you switch it a little bit, we'll say, so now we've been focusing on from the perspective of the person, right? So from the perspective of the person, every Jew has made 48 covenants, right, on every single mitzvah. If you look at this, interestingly enough, not from the perspective of people, but from the perspective of mitzvos, Shabbos say every single mitzvah, im l'chol mitzvah mitzvah shebetorah, shalom nichrasu aleh arba u'shmona brisos of 603,000, right? So shal sheish me'os elef u'shloshes alaf v'chamesh me'os v'chamishim, 603,550. Let's remember again, that's the tally. That's the number of Jewish men between the ages of 20 and 60. So let's say, so you could do the math. Every single mitzvah, right, has had 48 times 603,550. Right, thank you. 603,550. So that every single mitzvah has 603,550 times 48 number of covenants associated with it, which is an incredible idea. So we'll say, what's the takeaway message? Well, actually, we'll get them. Amar Rabbi, the Divrei Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, according to Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, Ish Kfar Akko, Shnemar Mishum Rabbi Shimon, Ein L'chol Kol Mitzvah, Mitzvah Shabbat Torah, Shal Nichresu Aleh Arbim Ushmon Brisos, Shal Sheish Me'os Elef Ushloshes Alav V'chamesh V'chamishin. Nimsa L'chol Echad V'echad Me'Yisrael. Therefore, we'll say, it turns out for every Jew, Sheish Me'os Elef Ushloshes Alafim V'chamesh V'chamishin. Shabbos, I seem to be saying the same thing. My beneo. Shabbos is very interesting. My beneo. Amar Rav Misharshia. Arva v'arva da'arva ikmin arba. Say, remember, there's one more piece in all of this. What's the one more piece in all of this? That remember, in addition to the concept, ultimately, again, of every Jew taking upon himself 48 brisos, 48 covenants for every single mitzvah. I will say part of the mitzvahs that we have is a din of arvos, a responsibility that we have for each other. So I will say, so part of that is I have a responsibility for you, so you have a responsibility for me. So if I have a responsibility for you, I will say that means I have a responsibility for your 48 brisos as well. But you're also a guarantor for another Jew. So I will say, see, here's the shaila. The shaila is, doesn't my personal responsibility just go on you as an individual? In other words, each of us are responsible for our fellow Jew as individuals? Or do we also have responsibility for the responsibility that our fellow Jew has for other Jews? So in other words, am I just simply a guarantor for my fellow Jew? Or am I also a guarantor for my fellow Jew, and I'm a guarantor on his, what's the word, guaranteeship? Guarantoritude?
Guaranteed.
Right? Guaranteed, good. Or am I a guarantor on his guarantee for other people as well? So I will say, so that'll obviously again sway the numbers in different directions. We'll say two major takeaways. Number one, that we do not have a casual relationship with mitzvahs. Right? We are so embedded, multiple layers of connection, multiple layers of bris with every single mitzvah that exists, which is a truly beautiful and incredible idea. But I'll say not only that, but we have also, in addition to all of this, we have a guaranteeship with another. My bris with mitzvahs, so both say, covers you, and your bris with mitzvahs covers me. In other words, part of the relationship that we have with mitzvahs ultimately is a responsibility that we have towards one another. Such an incredible Gemara. Let's go back to it. Dara Shabi Huda ben Achmeni mitur Gemara Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Kala parsha kula lo ne'amra ela b'noif v'no efes. So we'll say back to Har Grizim and Har Eval. So a pretty incredible Gemara over here. The entire parsha. I will say, what entire parsha are we talking about? We're talking about the parsha of Har Grizim and Har Eval. This entire parsha was only said regarding an adulterer and an adulteress. In other words, we'll say, remember, there's a whole bunch of brachas and klalos that were given over to Klal Yisrael. So what Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani is trying to highlight over here is, really, what this is all about is immorality. That's the key. In other words, let's say, which if you think about it just a moment, right? Pasuk says Kedoshim Tiyu. How does Rashi explain Kedoshim Tiyu? Have a prushim min ha'arayos. Stay away from immorality. That's how Rashi defines Kedusha. So what you begin to see, and it makes sense because the essence of Kedusha is the ability to remain a moral individual. So essentially what Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani is saying over here is when Klal Yisrael comes in and they go to Har Grizim and Har Eval, at the end of the day what they're really focused on is ultimately again morality. That is the true essence of what it is that's unfolding over here. So listen to this. For example, Arur ha'ish asher ya'asa pesel u'masecha. What does the pasuk say? Cursed is the person who makes a pesel, an idol, masecha, a graven image. So the Gemara says, Ba'arur sagilei. I will say, is it enough to, that's avodah zarah. So what is it? Is it enough to say arur? Is it enough to say cursed by avodah zarah? Ela zeha ba'al ha'erva, v'holid ben. So you know what it actually refers to? This is incredible. It refers to someone who commits adultery and has a child as a result of that adultery, and ultimately, again, then he goes, so now what happens? That kid is a mamzer. Let's say it is very difficult to be a mamzer. Right? Why is it difficult to be a mamzer? First of all, in general, even colloquially, it's difficult to be around a mamzer, right? But we're talking about, not colloquially, we're talking about halachically. Right? This guy who's a mamzer, remember, he can't marry anyone. Right? He can't marry anyone. And we'll say, so what generally, what is a mamzer going to end up doing? Chassan is going to leave the fold. So what happens? He goes and he marries an idolatress. Right? So what happens? And ultimately, what's going to happen? He's going to worship idolatry more, and his children are going to worship idolatry as well. And what's going to happen? Ultimately, again, cursed are his parents who brought him to this. So I'll say it's incredible. It's incredible. So here again, it seems to be, according to Yehuda Bar Nachmani, what Klal Yisrael is getting exposed to first when they come into Eretz Yisrael is maintain lives of moral purity. Because at the end of the day, moral purity is what will put your family on the right direction. And failure to adhere to that ultimately puts your family in a very negative trajectory, which could chas v'shalom negatively impact them going forward. And if that happens, the parents are held accountable. So I want to be clear in general, parents are not held accountable for the decisions their children make. We know this. This is a story as old as time, right? Parents could do everything right, but your kids are going to make their own decisions. That being said, if it is clear that you did things wrong, and as a result of those wrong things, your children made bad life decisions, you are accountable for that. In other words, if I do everything right and my kids do their own thing, okay, what am I going to do? I tried. But sometimes it's clear, I did something wrong. I modeled the wrong behavior. I took the wrong approach. Now, very often, I didn't mean to do it wrong. The hardest part of parenting is it's on-the-job learning. Right? And sometimes, if you have multiple kids, usually you tend to get things better, right, as the process moves along, right? So on one hand, by the youngest child often has less rules because he's just tired, right? Less rules, but at the same time, I pretty much know by now, I don't necessarily know what works, but I definitely know what doesn't work. I know what doesn't work. And sometimes life is about just avoiding the things that don't work. Right? So I'll say, it's incredible you saw it in parenting. If I did something to mess up this kid, I'm responsible for that. Not that I did it intentionally, but if I did it, I'm responsible for that. And that's what we're saying over here. Again, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is telling Klal Yisrael, you're going into Eretz Yisrael, you're about to establish a new life, new families. Again, you are responsible for the moral quality of the lives you create. Incredible. Turn Rabbanan. Let's take a little bit more and then we'll stop. You shall give the bracha on Har Grizim and the klala. What does this mean? So I'll say, if all the pasuk is coming to tell me that you should give the bracha on Har Grizim and klala and Har Ival, kvar ne'emar elu yamdu levarech es al Har Grizim uksive elu yamdu es klala b'Har Ival. So I'll say, so that's obvious. The pasuk already says it. But ultimately, again, I will say, what does it come to teach me? That the bracha has to come before the klala. Yachol Yehu kol habrachos. Yachol kol habrachos kol mos leklalos. Maybe you would think that all of the brachos have to come before the klalos. Talmud lomar brachol klala. Bracha achas kodemes leklala. Then kol habrachos kol mos leklalos. So both remember again. So it's to teach me how are brachos and klalos given on Har Grizim and Har Ival. Bracha klala, bracha klala, bracha klala. So the hakish bracha leklala lomer lecha. Maklala b'Leviim, bracha for the Leviim. Furthermore, just like the bracha was recited by the Leviim, just like the klala was recited by the Leviim, so to the bracha was recited by the Leviim. Umaklala b'Kol Ram, just like the klala ultimately again was said in a loud voice. Af bracha b'Kol Ram, so too the bracha was also said in a loud voice. Umaklala b'Lashon HaKodesh, and just like the klala is given over Lashon HaKodesh, Af bracha b'Lashon HaKodesh, so too the bracha is given over Lashon HaKodesh. Umaklala b'Chlal u'Biprat. And just like the klala both is given over bichlal biprat, specific, right, or general and then specific, then what? Right? Af bracha bichlal biprat umaklala elu ve'elu onin va'omer amen. And just like by the klala, right, everyone answered amen. You have to answer amen. Af bracha elu ve'elu onin va'omer amen. So to ultimately again, everyone answers amen as well. So I just want to point out with this we'll conclude. Give us a few minutes to get ready for davening. So I just want to conclude by saying the following. Remember, how did this last piece start? Because by the way, pretty remarkable accomplishment. I'm just whatever. I'm not looking for recognition or anything, but I'm just saying we made it. We made it to the end, right? Given the fact that 2 days ago we were literally like 4 blocks behind. I think it's just. I just want to end up with this last piece. Remember, the whole essence of Har Grizim and Har Ival is an initiation into life in Eretz Yisrael. And how does initiation of life into Eretz Yisrael begin? Ultimately, for Klal Yisrael, bracha comes before klala. I will say, remember, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yoshua, is giving chinuch to Klal Yisrael. I will say, how does chinuch start? Bracha before klala. I will say, how does chinuch for our children start? bracha before klala. If I want my children to love Yiddishkeit, which is what every single parent wants, give the sweetness over, give the beauty over, give the grandeur over, give the bracha. Is the klala necessary? Of course. A person always has to understand the ramifications and repercussions of anything and everything they do. But always start with the bracha. And then ultimately, go to the klala. Shkoyach. Shkoyach. A good nerve Shabbos, everyone. Shkoyach.